This podcast is part of the Game and Entertainment Network. Visit tgenetwork.net to find the latest episodes from all our shows.
It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Aggronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again. Time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 186. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hi.
Grace.
Happy New Year.
Kodra, with new numbers behind his name.
Hello.
Tam.
Also Happy New Year.
And Thalen.
I do still exist.
Welcome to Hell back, Thalen.
Hooray.
It's good to be back.
We have missed you. Also, welcome back, listeners, if we still have some after taking off 2 episodes in a row.
Whatever, it was the holidays.
Yeah, holidays happened. And tonight, we are actually recording the Games of the Year show when it's still somewhat relevant. Like, always in the past, we have recorded the Games of the Year show as a way of spackling over top of the absence of, you know, me primarily, since, like, I'm the one who records this thing, when I'm at, like, PAX South. But I'm not going to PAX South this year. Though Ash, I believe, still is.
Mm-hmm.
We might have live on the show reporting.
No.
That'll be interesting.
Well, we'll see.
Anyway, so we have a list of games, and when you have 6 co-hosts, you end up with a lot of games, even though we have overlap.
Yeah, quite a bit of overlap.
So I'm going to do these in order that, like, they were literally pasted in our Slack channel earlier. So the one with the most picks, Horizon Zero Dawn.
I mean, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like it's the best game of the year for me, at least personally.
Yeah, it's definitely at the top of my list for the year.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's way up there for me.
It's beaten out by exactly one game for me.
This is going to come up very soon, but this is my game of the year. It is the best. So that's how I would award it. However, I also have a game of 2017, which is relevant.
Right.
But this game is more timeless. It came at a time that I needed to play this game, but it's a beautiful story about an apocalypse that gives me hope for humanity.
I feel like it's also the best executed open world game I've played.
I can't argue with that statement at all.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. And I'm more and more checked out of open world games, as will probably come up later.
I do feel like I'm not a huge fan of the open world genre, but this was very, very fun.
Yeah, the story of this game was absolutely fantastic and was what kept driving me forward. But I also loved the combat. I know that's maybe not something everyone who loves this game would agree with, but I don't know. It's really hard to find any sort of faults with fighting robot dinosaurs.
There was just such a satisfying gameplay loop for me of wandering around the world, knocking parts off the dinosaurs, wandering around the world, knocking parts off the dinosaurs, eventually selling them, get upgrades, so I can hunt bigger dinosaurs.
I have never played a Monster Hunter game, but this game is probably going to get me to play Monster Hunter World. Because, yeah, I really had a lot of fun with this.
I'm totally going to play Monster Hunter World as Aloy, though.
It has a really, really good enemy design in the fact that, like, every enemy is some sort of a puzzle that you can solve.
But
Tall
also,
Striders are hands down the best radio tower ever.
I think it's also rewarding that all of the enemies are puzzles that you can solve, but those puzzles have multiple solutions and can still be brute forced if you really want to.
Yeah, like if you just don't like the weapon that would theoretically be the ideal weapon for this enemy, like you can deal with it other ways.
And that's important for me because, like, as I get into the game, I sort of found a core loop of things that I enjoyed using, and I didn't necessarily have to give that up just because, oh, well, you need this weapon to kill this specific boss. It was just very satisfying.
Part of what makes that work so well is the fact that every weapon feels so different. This game made me appreciate different ammo types way more than I do in most games.
It's so true. Like that was actually where I was going to go as well, is that I very frequently don't have much time or taste for, here's an alternate ammo type that doesn't actually kill the things you're fighting all that well, but does some other thing. And like almost that other thing is almost never interesting enough for me to care. Which I know puts me in stark contrast to Ashgar in general.
I mean, it depends.
But yeah, I mean, in Horizon, I love Tear Blast arrows. They're amazing. They're so fun. And they're so specific to that game, but they're so fun.
I mean, I found value in all of the elemental status effects. Those were useful from big to small enemies. So that was also pretty, like, I was regularly trying a whole bunch of different things.
Well, and the gear design was also interesting in that they didn't just have, like, stat sticks. Like, all the gear kind of did a thing, but it was drastically different than some of the other things that you could get. So, like, there was no like one piece of armor that you eventually, made your way into that was just universally better than everything else. Everything kind of had like a piece, or I didn't get it at least.
There might be one of those.
Well, see, like I had purple quality armor, but like the one piece that I saw that advanced all stats was like way lower stat hits than.
Did you get all of the batteries, Bell?
No, I didn't get all the batteries.
So one for like all the power cells is armor that is better than everything else.
And it's so
never
awesome.
Mind.
It's so fancy. It's the fanciest armor.
I don't even remember which set I used, but I think it was one of the, I don't know, like an anti-corruption armor or something like that.
I always used anti-physical because I like to get out in close and start scrapping with things.
I always used sneaky armor because I like to sneak things and make them kill each other.
Yep.
Yeah, that's mostly how I went too.
You know the thing I never used?
Stealth
Traps.
Anyway? Oh.
No, like I actually stealthed around quite a bit because like there were times where it just felt like it was useful to stealth, but yeah, no, I never did the whole set up a bunch of traps and then, lure things into them because it always felt like it was... The few times I did that, I ended up laying way more traps than I needed and then having to go pick them up afterwards.
I'm curious how you did the like end of the cauldron giant T-Rex fight. Because the only way I could reasonably do that fight without just getting completely killed was setting that room full of traps before it started.
I honestly don't remember. I think I just ran around a lot and hoped to get lucky shots off. There were a lot of encounters that I just kind of ran around hoping to get lucky shots and at the same time dodging oncoming attacks.
So, I guess we don't really want to get into spoilers too much in this show, but this really was a game that made me think about the story that was being told and sort of the way it presents this is a year where my personal faith in humanity took some hits, and having a story that is presenting to you this indomitable human spirit in the face of species annihilation, extinction, and how they overcome that was really, really inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, this story made me feel a lot of things, and I appreciated it for it. And it also, just the narrative of it did some things that I sort of saw them sneaking up and thought, nah, they're not going to do that. And then they did.
Yeah.
And that was just unusual for a story in a game, and it was just incredibly fun to watch it all unfold. Even once I sort of knew what was happening, I wanted to devour every little piece of lore associated with it to see all the details of exactly what happened. And I cared about these characters too.
Yeah, so because I played a lot of games and I built games, I spend a lot of time in front of games where I have that moment where I think, oh, it'd be really cool if they did this thing. I mean, they're not gonna, because it's too complicated, or I can see all of the issues that it would create, but mostly just like it's too hard to execute well enough, and they'll probably just do something else. And I remember having that thought over and over, like, oh, I think they could do this thing here and it would be really cool, but let's see what they actually do. And then they actually do that thing in Horizon, and it was like, oh wow, that's cool. It was delightfully surprising frequently.
I feel like this is some of the most interesting sci-fi since like I first played through the Mass Effect games, because like it's an interesting new setting, which we don't always have interesting new settings.
And it's an interesting new setting populated with interesting characters. Like, it's a character-driven story that I want to know more about the world with, which doesn't happen a lot. That's cool.
Well, and there are like lots of characters other than the protagonist that I actually ended up caring a lot about. Because usually these open world games have a protagonist that you care about, and then some goal character. Be it you're saving them or you're, avenging them. There's some character that represents a goal that you're supposed to care about too. But like there were so many supporting characters just out in the world that were worth caring about.
They felt like people, and there were many, many places in the game where various side characters could have really felt like tropes and didn't. They very much avoided that.
They very much avoided the Skyrim, oh, it's this person again, but with different colored hair.
Well, and even a lot of the quote-unquote villains were three-dimensional characters. They weren't just the bad guy that you know is bad because they're dressed like a bad guy and they're laughing maniacally. I mean, like, from a certain perspective, you could understand how they got to where they're at in the narrative.
I really do also want to call out Ashley Birch for just a fantastic voice acting job as Aloy. Some of those lines are delivered with a lot of nuance and emotion, and it's consistent with the scene constantly.
Yes. Voice acting is fantastic.
It's one of those things that I've noticed it can be hard, especially when you're just reading lines in a vacuum, to put a line out there and get the tone completely wrong, and that never happened in this game.
Especially with open world games, where a lot of times you're doing stuff devoid of solid context, because you can wander around and do things in whatever order you want. So does it make sense?
I mean, I think a lot of that too comes down to the writing. All of the pieces fit together very well, and there's so much nuance and so much humor, and I don't know. I can't think of enough good things to say about this game. There's so many things I love.
Basically, if you have a PlayStation and you don't already have this game, go buy the game. Also, we recorded an entire show where we gushed on this game. So we should probably move on to the next one, as we have a bunch of stuff on the list, unless somebody has like a really pressing comment that they want to make before we move forward.
I think we're good.
Okay, so the next one is Persona 5. Which
Speaking of a good year for PlayStation, huh?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, I like this game enough to make it Game of the Month. Everything that has been said about Horizon Zero Dawn, like, deeply resonating with people and inspiring them, that is Persona 5 for me. Like, Persona 5 hits all of those notes for me. And it hits them for me because I didn't think it was going to. I came to this, and we'll talk about this one more later, but Persona 4 is one of my favorite games of all time, and is in large part the game that got me to play JRPGs again. But it is a happy game for the most part, and Persona 5 is not, and it's raw. Like the first big section of it is rough.
Yes,
and it was really hard for me to get through, but I get it. Like, having played through the whole thing, I get why it starts that way and starts so darkly and so depressingly because it's using that to inspire, at least inspire me in the same way that Horizon did. And it was the game I needed this year.
Yeah, it's a very timely game.
This is the best game of 2017. And really, this feels like a beautiful encapsulation of what I am feeling throughout this year. And we'll talk about it more, but for me, this game definitely motivates me. I haven't finished it yet. Currently, I wouldn't say I'm what I would call inspired or hopeful, but maybe it'll get there. But it definitely is motivating, and it is cathartic, and it is empathetic.
Yeah, I mean, this is a game where you start out as a complete and utter outcast, and then start helping people by breaking into people's heads and making them feel bad about what they've done wrong.
This is a game of literally everyone you are trying to help being oppressed by miserable old men who are just abusing their power to maintain their power.
Yeah.
And it's about doing something about it.
But it's also thoughtful about it.
Oh yes.
Like it's about it, and that's I think that's the part that I find inspiring is that it could so easily have just been a power fantasy about taking down oppressors, but it's more than that. It also has like full stop the best soundtrack of an incredibly long time. Like every track in the game is perfectly timed, sounds great. It's got a great musical theme. I have been listening to the music all year, like from before the game came out in the States to like my walk to work this morning, and I'm not tired of it, and I love it.
I will also say another big thing, an improvement over Persona 4, much better like JRPG dungeon delving from my perspective. They do a couple of things that are just smart systems changes, but they pour a lot of effort in the environment design of the palaces that you're looting.
It's a huge step. Yeah, it's a huge step forward because you go from the previous games where dungeons were like procedurally generated tiles, and they were themed. Some of the tiles were very detailed in their theming, but it didn't give you a sense of this being a space that you were maneuvering through. Whereas the dungeons in this one are great, like great mixture of fighting and solving puzzles and getting story dollops, and I mean just the pacing in them is great for the most part. There are a few where there's some like kind of boring long stretches where you're just sort of like grinding your way through parts of the dungeon, but at the same time, unlike Persona 4 and unlike a lot of other JRPGs, at no point did I ever feel like I needed to grind for levels or grind for items or power or anything. Like I played the game at what felt like a natural pace, which is really hard to do and doesn't happen a lot in JRPGs for me.
Yeah, if you're going to grind for anything, you're probably going to grind to try and get like special persona.
Or money.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you spend
to
money
buy,
poorly.
you get money so that you can buy special fancy persona.
Yeah, I did find myself like falling into the pattern of push as far into the palace as I could, as I reasonably felt like I could, and then warp to the very front of the palace and fight my way through as much of the early stuff as I could, because I could totally trash them and get more cash.
It also does a thing, and I'm used to this from Persona games, but I feel like it deserves a special call out here. It does something that Horizon also did for me, which was present me with many characters that I initially didn't like and grew to like as I understood them better. And at the same time gave characters who aren't your protagonist interesting character arcs that in some cases aren't wholly positive, and you don't see that very often.
This game also has a stealth section, a stealth mechanic to it, which I am definitely not used to in a JRPG, and it was actually pretty sweet.
I mean, the one downside of that is it can be difficult to get the camera to point where you want it to when you're hiding, because
Yes.
You basically only got 180 degrees of camera rotation when in any position, and a lot of times it'll stick you pointing not the way you want to be. But on the bright side, as long as you're hidden, nothing can see you. You don't have to worry about like which direction you're facing or which direction they're facing or any of that garbage. If you're hiding, you're invisible.
This is why, despite the game having a bunch of stealth sections, it doesn't really bother me at all. Because it's fairly simple, and the penalty for messing up is very low.
Yes. Yeah, the worst thing that happens is the bad guy gets the jump on you.
Yeah.
Which sucks.
Admittedly, it kind of sucks, but...
Well, but you even if you get seen, even if you get seen in stealth sections, you have the ability to like mitigate the bad guy getting the jump on you.
Yeah, if you're fast enough to hit them first, then you can still, at least start not surrounded.
Yeah. I think we may end up talking at more length about this one later this month, so...
Yes.
It's true.
Yep. Looking forward to spoiling this one.
Okay, so the next one on the list is Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood, which was also a game of the month. There might be a pattern here.
We picked good games of the month.
It was a good year for games in general.
Yeah.
So Stormblood was definitely on my list. I mean, we all sort of knew we were gonna play it, but I wasn't super looking forward to the story necessarily in this one, and it won me over anyway. Like, I didn't feel going into it that I cared that much about Alamigo. I wasn't that excited about going to deserty places.
100%. I mean, other than I love deserty places, 100% this. I went into this not excited about the story.
Yeah, but
and honestly, like
won me over.
The tail end of Heavensward kind of put me there to where I wasn't that interested in this expansion from a story aspect, because I don't feel like Heavensward really ended on a really strong note, or at least not nearly as strong as A Realm Reborn did.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It doesn't end on quite the same magnitude of cliffhanger.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's got a big cliffhanger that's world-affecting, but not a personal one like Heavensward did.
But honestly, running around with Alice and Lise 100% makes up for all of it, because just the interactions between all the characters that you're hanging out with are amazing. Also, it gave me Red Mage.
Well, there's so many great like story arcs inside of zones. So like the whole I'm drawing a blank on the name of the zone that has all the Steps tribal stuff going on with the different factions. Asm Steps, yeah. There you go. Like, that was such a cool zone, and it didn't really play out the way I expected it to.
Agreed.
Yeah. I thought
but
I
I also
hate
totally,
that zone.
I also totally fell in love with several of the characters in the zone.
I mean, the zone looks like the Calm Lands, the place where FF10 playthroughs go to die.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at that zone, like, it looks like a whole lot of nothing. Like, how can this be interesting? But there was some cool story, and like, I went and explored every inch of that zone, and it was fun.
Yeah, I mean, this is a year of me being really into games that on paper, or parts of games that on paper I really would not like. I am not interested in person from civilization goes to tribal lands and figures out all about these tribes. Like, that story is almost always uncomfortable at best and gross at worst, and I'm just very not interested in it when it's the theme of the game. But it's done really well in game. It was done really well in at least 2 games this year, where I felt like, okay, this is doing an interesting thing that I am interested in this thing. And Asm Steps was one of those, like, oh god, here we go. It's the Unite the Tribes storyline. But like, no, it works. And
I mean, it is, but
it is.
That's not how they go about doing it.
Yeah.
Well, and so often, like, when there's a Unite the Tribes storyline, it's through conquest. And this was through, like, earning trust and improving, usefulness and worth.
Well, it's about conquest, and it's also about imposing your rules on them. And this was not, I mean, Asm Steps was not that. And that was I think the best moment. Like, I was not sold on it until the very last, 10 minutes, at which point I was like, this is fantastic.
Well, I think, we went into the steps looking for allies, not for vassals.
Well, and the thing is you go through, you follow their cultural traditions, which seem weird, and you kind of get a feeling like, this is a weird cultural tradition. I can't believe this is actually going to work out. And it absolutely does. It's like setting you up for something else happening. But no, they're no, oh, you won? Okay. You have abided by our culture. It's about cultural understanding.
Yeah.
And subordinating yourselves to other people's cultures.
You go in, you play by their rules, you understand their rules, and their rules work. There isn't some breakdown at the end where they say, oh, well, this is not legitimate. No, this is legitimate. We get it. We're not happy about it, but whatever. This is how things work here.
Also, speaking of following rules, that zone and that story has one of my favorite dungeon bosses in any game ever.
It's so good. I love that boss.
To clarify, this is a boss where you don't attack anything. It is a boss fight entirely about dodging stuff that tries to hit you on the ground.
Can you not stand in the bad? Can you dodge stuff?
As a healer, you might understand why I might love this fight.
There's no damage to be done. There is no healing to be done. You take 2 hits, you're out. Everyone takes 2 hits, you wipe.
Yep.
And the thing is, it's actually I find it rather difficult to make it all the way through that dance without ever taking a single hit.
I tend to find the end kind of rough.
There's one sequence
you
that I have trouble with. Yeah. There's one sequence at the very end.
Because they decided that they needed everybody to up their game. Because at the end, you're going to need to up your game.
But mostly, it was a setting that, other than the underwater stuff, I wasn't terribly excited about. And I really liked their version of underwater.
Where things aren't trying to kill you, so you can just enjoy it and swim around.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah, it was great.
Plus, it gave me, my favorite melee DPS class, so I'm all about the samurai.
The Bard revamp actually has me liking Bard a whole lot. After deciding I wasn't really interested in what they did do it in Heaven's Ward.
I haven't been back to Summoner.
The only part of this that I kind of feel bad about is that, as a whole, I've kind of bounced off Final Fantasy XIV for the moment. But I also know at some point in the future, I will go back and soak up whatever I missed.
I mean, I think I'm at that point almost where enough content has now piled up since I've played last that it's just about time for me to go back and see what I've been missing.
The cosmetic toilets haven't gone in yet, have they?
The what now?
It's called a glamour commode.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
The cosmetic toilet.
Wow.
No, those haven't gone in yet.
Yeah, so that's going to be the patch that probably brings me back.
Yeah,
I think that redo their glamour system. Yes, that's
I think the next big patch is going to be the one that brings me back for a while, or at least
also
to catch
going
up.
to have Sigmascape in it, so that'll help.
Is that the new Palace of the Dead?
No, that's the new raid, the new 8-man raid.
I mean, the one thing that this expansion did, or I don't know that there's anything specific that the game did or if the culture around the players changed, but the mega pull go dungeon atmosphere has gotten to be the default.
Yeah.
Which is something that I'm not that big of a fan of, and I suspect when I return to the game, it may not be as a healer anymore, or may only heal for raids with friends. But that's a player culture thing that I don't enjoy. But the game itself has been pretty fantastic.
I mean, overall, I feel like it was a much better expansion than Heavensward. And, I mean, to be honest, I loved the hell out of Heavensward when we were going through it. But, the story alone with Stormblood was so much better. And it was, it had so many different story beats in this one.
I have to say, I really liked the base Heavensward story, and the patch story just wasn't quite as good.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I also really loved. I hesitate to say that this is better than the Heavensward story. I just feel like the Heavensward base story was so good.
Then maybe the post Heavensward story has diluted my memory of how good the Heavensward story was.
It definitely did for me until I looked back and was like, oh, that's where it ended? Oh, wow, yeah.
I think the key problem with Final Fantasy XIV is that they're really not good at supporting alting. And that's coming from a game where you can roll every single job on one character, but the answer to how to get those leveled is to grind.
And not fun grinds.
No, it's not a fun grind at all.
It's just yeah.
I mean, that's where I ended up with Stormblood, and honestly, why I bounced is I leveled one character like normal, and it was some of the funnest questing that I've experienced in an MMO. And then I started hard pushing up a secondary class, and it was straight grind city. And when I topped the mountain with my samurai, I just didn't have any oomph left to keep playing the game.
I waited for Beast Tribe dailies, which is how I leveled most of my alternate classes in Heavensward as well. It's not fast, but it's also not a grind.
It's true. And you get mounts.
And you get mounts and other stuff.
I wish I cared about the Beast Tribes.
Let's be completely clear.
Some of the old ones.
I had to do this one because the title you get is Of the Blue.
It's fair.
I don't care that they keep teasing Blue Mage and are never going to add it.
By God, you're a Blue Mage. The title says so.
They have been teasing it
several times now.
I mean, Yoshi P is also a troll.
He's a troll, but he's a troll that delivers. He delivered me Red Mage. I have faith.
He did deliver after that tease.
It's going to be interesting.
He gave me Red Mage with healing spells and an instant res. My faith is there. I couldn't have asked for more.
It's going to be interesting how he delivers on Blue Mage.
If anybody can figure it out, this team can.
It's gotta be a tank. Come on. It's a class about getting hit by enemies.
It's true. Or eating them.
Well, yeah, okay, fair.
I still want to see Chemist as a healer.
So, this game also came with the most fan servicey for me and probably Ash raid that I've ever seen.
Yes. Delta Escape is one big long tribute to FF5.
And that was awesome. Especially Halicarnassus was a super fun fight for me.
Learning that fight with bugs was a pain, quite frankly. Almost I regret doing.
Yeah, but once you get it, it's awesome.
Yes.
It's always fun.
Is that the chessboard fight?
It is.
Okay, yeah.
What class are you? Are you a frog? You better be a frog.
The Savage version of that fight also has imps and pigs. So figure out what you need to get hit by in order to not become a spot on the ground. But yeah, Stormblood does some cool stuff.
The only thing that I wish the game still had were the off-patch Hildebrand boss fights.
Yeah, I missed those too.
Those are so great. They were just so great. Even if it's just let me fight Gilgamesh over and over and over in a bunch of different ways, I'd be totally down with that.
I feel like they have milked Gilgamesh as much as necessary.
There's always room for more Gilgamesh.
They did add a single Hildebrand quest in the last patch, and they have said they're going to add more.
Interesting. Okay, anything else on Stormblood before we move forward?
Nope.
Super Mario Odyssey.
This was a Mario game.
Oh
yeah,
my God.
It came out in 2017.
Game.
I feel like it's the most creative Mario game that I've played in a very, very long time.
So, I have not truly enjoyed a Mario game since Sunshine. They've been okay, but I haven't loved them. I love this game.
So I feel like
I'm still playing it.
Mario games in general are about some gimmick, and this is one of those situations where that gimmick works perfectly and feels so flawless when you use it. Gimmick being the hat, but the hat can let you do so many interesting things. And it's not just this is a power-up. It completely changes the way that the gameplay works around it. And there are so many things that you do, And you may have only encountered it a few times, but like when you do, it's really interesting. Like the little Moa heads that like like you flip up their shades to make them run faster, or put the shades back on to slow them down, or the first time you hop on a dinosaur and it crashes down a wall.
What actually sold this game for me was the spectacle of Nudong City, which was such a good world and is probably the reason it's on the Game of the Year.
Man, yes. I thought I was going to hate that level.
I did
it was
too.
so awkward looking, but no, it works somehow.
There are a lot of elements about this game that, like, at initial pass, I wasn't sure about. But after experiencing them, I have all the faith in the world that Mario Magic is still a thing.
I have never wanted to free chain chomps so much in my life.
Oh god, they're so fun.
I want to free a chain chomp and then just chain chomp around. The game is unabashedly silly. And works.
There's so many interesting game physics things you do with the hat that just feel good when you do them.
Yeah. I love that New Donk City is very clearly the city that, like, Donkey Kong attacked once upon a time, and now Pauline is the mayor. Like, sure. Why? I don't know. I love stacking Goombas. Stacking Goombas is way more fun than I think it ought to be, but I love doing it.
Piloting a bullet bill is fun.
I wish I could be a piranha plant. I can't be a piranha plant because they eat my hat.
So the other thing that I thought wasn't going to work really well was the whole sometimes you're in 3D mode and sometimes you're in 2D mode. Because, like, you shift between the two, but it doesn't feel bad when you do it.
No, it's
They've
like...
had some practice with that one.
Yeah, it's true. But it works. It's like, it feels good. It's like flavor. And it never overstays its welcome.
I can think of one scenario where it's a little rough, which is a post-game area which has you try to navigate an area that has, like, circular gravity in 2D.
Oh, God, okay. Yes,
that part's not great.
The post-game is a different story.
Right, but if you think about the special area of Super Mario World, those were completely nonsense too. Story.
Yeah, like
that.
This game is a delightful romp, and then you hit post-game, and the post-game is like, I mean, you beat the game. You can just wander around and collect stuff if you want. Like, have fun. But
some other stuff also opens up.
Yeah. But, like, a whole bunch of stuff will open up. And also, this is the point at which the designers were allowed to cut loose and do whatever they want. And wow, they can make really, really difficult stuff if allowed to. Which makes me...
3D World did this too.
Yeah. Well, it makes me appreciate their restraint with the rest of it. Because the rest of it is so finely crafted and flows so well. And you don't realize how good you've gotten at the game until it tests you. Because it does, like, at the by the end, it really tests you, and you're like, oh wow, I've gotten good at this, and it feels great, but also like, wow, some of that stuff is really hard.
Well, and the thing that I really appreciate about this design is how gently it introduces new concepts. Like,
you extremely good at introducing new concepts.
You kind of almost accidentally stumble upon it, and then that now becomes something you're going to do a lot,
and you'll get good at it because you have a bunch of, like, low risk, high reward opportunities to use, like those speed flowers. Those things can be so frustrating. And the first time you saw them were one of the times where they're, like, actually difficult. They'd be maddening, but they're just like random flowers in the third or fourth world, and you're just like, all right, whatever. What do these do? Oh, they make me run really fast. Well, that's silly.
Well, they make me run really, really fast.
Yeah, they're like, oh wow, these make me run crazy fast, and like, that's weird. But there's no real downside to playing with it. You're like, okay, well, I guess I can cross this kind of big-ish space real fast just for my own convenience. And then later they're like, okay, we need you to race a bunch of turtles while spam collecting these so that you don't fall in the water that you're running across, because you can only run across water when you're moving that fast. So, have fun with that.
Or we need you to stay on a very thin and narrow path while also running that fast.
Yeah.
You still need to keep running that fast. You just need to make a long jump in a few seconds.
Yep. Yeah, you need to maintain this by collecting several of them while you're moving really fast, and then make a long jump. And you're like, that's madness, but I can do it, huh?
By the time you see that version, you have already had experience with this several times.
It feels really good. There were a lot of times in that game, especially in the post-game stuff, but even before then, where I was like, this thing I did was nonsense, but I just got it on the first try or the second try. Huh. That was really that was crazy. What did I just do there? Game switches. I made a comment on Twitter recently to this effect. Like, I haven't been excited about a console in a long time. Like, they're just a vehicle to play games that I want to play, but the Switch I just enjoy playing games on.
I think I'm probably the only one here who primarily uses it in docked mode.
I actually also primarily use it in dock mode.
I think I'm the odd one out, as in that I play it mostly with it sitting somewhere while I have the detached controls, but not in docked mode.
Yeah, that I never do.
Yeah, I know. I did that for a little bit while playing Breath of the Wild, but not since I got a controller.
I use it as a handheld while the TV is otherwise occupied.
I keep thinking I will bring it to work and, play it over lunch, but then my world keeps getting busy, so it hasn't happened yet. I do have a nice case for it, though. I feel like also the Switch in general is kind of an unsung hero of, like, this show and 2017 in general, in that I did not really expect a lot out of it, but it certainly is an excellent console.
I thought it was so silly when I saw the initial ads for it, and that evaporated real quick when I actually got my hands on one.
Okay, so next up is Destiny 2. And man, do I have a lot of feels about Destiny 2 in general.
Was this one of your games, Bill?
This is one of my games. This is definitely one of my games.
It was also on my list.
Shoot.
I love Destiny. Like, I did not stick around the entire length of Destiny, but I played for a while when it first came out, and then came back right before the Taken King. And then from that point on, I was hooked. So I had a lot of expectations going into Destiny 2. And some of them were not really, what I expected. The game didn't necessarily end up making good on everything that was happening in year 3 when Destiny 2 launched. But the game that presented was all of the good that I liked from Destiny 1 with so much better story beats. And I feel like for anyone that did not do the madness that I did in going out and digging for things in the Grimoire cards, it actually maybe let people see what I really liked about Destiny 1, if that makes sense.
I felt that way. Like,
I did too.
I enjoyed Destiny 1, but I frankly didn't have much idea of what the hell was going on with the story. I mean, I knew that, Belle, you talked about it constantly and knew all kinds of crazy things that I had no concept or awareness of. And I enjoyed the fact that in Destiny 2, I actually got to see this stuff happening in-game, or have little lore items explain it to me in-game instead of whatever the nonsense was with the Grimoire, because I was never going to bother with that.
Yeah. I mean, my opinion about Destiny 1 is pretty well registered at this point, but this was fun, and it let me know what was going on, and I felt like I could keep a thread of a story that made sense. As well as in the first, like, they continued that with the next piece of story that gave me more, that was like, okay, I understand what's going on here.
They let me know who Cade 6, Ikora Ray, and Zavala are, and also
They're a fire team.
Also Hawthorne, and like I understand each of those characters' motivations and desires and follies, and like their personality shines through in all of their dialogue. You get to hear a lot of their dialogue because they're constantly accompanying you on various things.
I mean, accompanying is kind of a strong word.
They're the radio chatter.
Yeah. But they're great radio chatter.
Yeah. And, like, it told a story with a complex villain. Like, the villain
it introduced Failsafe. Failsafe is the best character ever.
Yeah, it introduced a lot of... I don't necessarily know that Failsafe and Asher and the human one on Earth See, these characters aren't as fleshed out for me.
Yeah, I really like Asher. Asher is a lot of fun.
I like Failsafe.
I love Failsafe. It's like there's Failsafe, there's that cranky guy with one hand, there's
Asher.
that sniper guy,
And his opinions
there's-
about
Devon
Vuvuzela.
Kay.
right, and there's the cool lady on Titan.
Sloan.
Those are the people.
As I said, they are not as
Like I
well
may or may not
fleshed
know
out.
all their names. So.
We understand, Bell, but my point would be that they have character, and I kind of understand them, but they aren't as well supported as like the main three, and
Right.
even Hawthorne. And I really hope they start getting Hawthorne in on some more of the like chatter.
Yeah, it kind of annoys me that, like, at the end of the game, Hawthorne just became the clan person. Like, you go see them for clan stuff, but that's, like, I wanted more from Hawthorne. Like, Hawthorne was such an interesting character.
I agree.
And honestly, like, Curse of Osiris as something you play through, I thought was really interesting. Like, it's a good additional story addendum. It felt super rushed for PC players, but you know, the delay in the PC release date kind of made that a thing. It happened roughly 3 months after the console release.
It felt way too quick for me, but I understand that people who play more than I do were ready for it. And it didn't matter that much because it let me bump up my gear some more, and I really enjoyed playing through the story of it. It's been good. But I like all the characters. I like that I know at least the main characters well enough that when the Dawning came around and had me giving them presents, I actually cared about doing that and got to like laugh at the presents that I was giving them.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sad I missed that.
Like a tiny chicken-sized cape and horn.
Ha 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 ha.
Wow.
Yes, I understand why that would be funny to give to Cade 6.
And my favorite one was a book of space jokes for Ikora.
Yes. I was going to say, like, yeah, that's fantastic.
And Festival of Lost was a similar holiday in Destiny 1, and I'm kind of bummed that it didn't happen as their equivalent of Halloween this year, with the launch happening around that time for the PC. I mean, I get why they did what they did, because they were trying really hard not to have the PC release cycle be totally different than the console release cycle for events and such. There's a whole other side of Destiny 2 that, like, probably bears mentioning, that while they learn so much between year 1 and year 3, I feel like they're still going through the false starts with Destiny 2 and making a lot of mistakes, especially when it comes to itemization and monetization. So hopefully they'll sort that stuff out in the coming months. And it's only that so much right now is tied to Eververse.
I mean, it's good
because right or wrong, the Dawning was kind of the Eververse holiday.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that they're keeping monetization to Eververse, but it means that they're putting a lot of focus on Eververse.
Yeah, I mean, since release, a significant number more items have gone in through the Eververse than through drops in Rise of Osiris. So hopefully they'll figure out the perfect mix, because right now they're royally pissing a lot of people off. And for me, it's still the same game that I've always enjoyed, which is really tight gunplay and shooting space monsters and collecting interesting weapons. I am super glad they did not go back on static rolls, because static rolls were a huge benefit in Destiny 2 as far as I'm concerned, as compared to Destiny 1, because at least I can say, oh man, I really like Better Devils, and that mean the same thing to Kodra when he picks up a Better Devils. Whereas previously, a hobby of mine was grinding anything that dropped Vex stuff so that I could maybe get a good roll of an Imago loop. And I never actually got a good roll of an Imago loop, which was a Vex-themed hand cannon. So honestly, like, I am hoping as we get to the year 2 point that they will have made the tweaks necessary to really bring back into focus some of the things that were working well in Destiny 1. But all told, I'm still playing it on a regular basis. Okay, this next title is one that folks have played only very recently.
But it's that good.
The Sexy Brutale.
Yeah, so I had to change my list for this game. Like a few days ago. I didn't even really know where to begin with this one. It was like it's time travel clue puzzle game set to an electro swing soundtrack, and also there's some stealth elements.
Yes, and masks.
Yeah.
Masks are very important.
Masks are very important.
But yeah, it's basically Groundhog Day, but with murders.
So, Majora's Mask?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But it's so weirdly great.
And a really cool art style. Like, I'm honestly not sure how to properly describe the art style. It kind of makes me think of Grim Fandango, even though there's no like explicit Day of the Dead element to it, but it's like in that same area, I think. Yeah,
it's weird because I don't even know where to. It's like it's really difficult for me to explain why this game is so good.
So this is a game that I heard about it a few months back from like somebody reviewing it and basically describing it a little and saying, you know, the title is, you know, doesn't like, it's not what the title sounds like, and it's actually really good. And then it showed up in the Humble Monthly bundle last month, and then Tam ended up playing it and talking about how great it was. So then I installed it and started playing it, and yeah, it's amazing. It's a game where you really don't know what the hell's going on when it starts. Like, you wake up on the floor and a woman with no skin starts like telling you what to do.
Guess she's like a blood ghost or something. I don't even know. But she's like, hey, you know, that looks probably bad, but you could save some people. I think I might be dead. I'm not sure. I think probably though.
Yeah.
Like I'm probably dead.
Yeah,
and
I mean, my theory is that you were probably the first person murdered.
Yeah, but like I can go and try to stop other people from getting killed.
Yeah. So basically, you're in this mansion, and the dude that owns the mansion throws these amazing parties, and has been doing so for years. But this year, the party ends with all the guests murdered by the staff. Except you can, using a pocket watch that the weird-skinned ghost woman gives you, reset the day. And, you know, basically, by resetting time, you can explore different areas, and you can basically sneak around and peek through keyholes and watch people and see, you know, the paths that they take throughout the day, which are handily recorded on your map for you as you load them.
Yeah, the map lets you, as you discover people's patrol routes and like watch them go, it marks them on your map so you know where everyone is at all times. And by time, I really do mean like clock time.
Yeah, and so you can basically like figure out, you can watch people, you know, going through the mansion and listen in on them and start to piece together like bits and pieces of what's going on and what each of them, you know, like what each of them wants and what's happening and how they die, and then try to figure out, okay, what can I do indirectly without anybody seeing me to prevent this death? Because that's a very important element of the game. You cannot directly interact with any of the guests or with any of the staff.
Yeah.
Like if you end up in the same room with one of them, everything freezes and like their mask floats up into the air and starts chasing you.
Yeah, like some weird stuff happens. Weird stuff starts happening until you run away. But you have it's really easy to know where people are because like the sound design is great. You can hear people's footsteps. I mean, it's a little bit like Thief the Dark Project in that everyone is wearing tap shoes, but but it works. It works for the style and the sound. Like the sound design is built around that, which is great. And I just have this like, I'm like continually wandering around, looking at, you know, trying to find the next person who's about to get killed, and like following, like shadowing them to see how it happens, so I can make sure it doesn't.
Yeah, and then
But
also
then-
like try, from the point that they died, maybe like on your next, when you reset the clock, then figuring out, okay, where did the staff member come from that ultimately came along and did whatever, and trace them back to see their path and listen in on what they're saying, because a lot of times the staff will say things that will give you like some hints as to what you need to do as well.
Yeah, like you can hear the staff members plotting. And then there's weird layers where, okay, I saved this person by endangering this other person. Like in saving this person, I put this other person in danger. How do I manage to save both?
Yeah.
Like this has uncovered a new thing that I didn't realize.
And then whenever you save someone, you gain a new ability based on who that person was. Basically, you get to take their mask, and then you get a new ability related to them that basically gives you access to more of the mansion is the primary thing that this does. And the mansion is huge. And I'm very close to the end of the game, and I suspect at the very end I'm going to have to try and save every single person all in the course of a single day, which would require pretty expert timing in some cases.
Yes. Because yeah, once you know how it all works, you're like, okay, I need to save this person and this person. I need to save this person, then this person, then this person. But I need to pick up this thing because I'll need this for another person later. But it's building on this puzzle over a very long period of time and giving you a really good sense of what is happening where and when, such that you can save everybody. I don't really know what happens after that because I haven't played that far, but it's been fascinating to see this like elaborate Rube Goldberg machine and then trying to disassemble it delicately.
And I think despite this being like the last game that I played, actually I don't know that I even played this game in 2017. But I think this is my game of the year.
It's so clever. It's so very strange, but it's so clever.
And it has arguably the worst name.
It does. The name has
Definitely didn't help.
The name makes no sense to me at all.
It's the name of the hotel, right?
No.
It is it's the name of the mansion.
It was the name of the mansion? I thought it was the name of the party.
Yeah, there's a the room leading into the casino area. Like there's a big marquee over the door that says the Sexy Brutale.
Welcome to the Sexy Brutale.
Yeah.
Oh, it was a weird party.
So, next up, Hollow Knight.
Hollow Knight is definitely my game of the year. It is the best Metroidvania I have ever played.
Hey, it's a game that Ash has been talking about all year, and I finally played it over the holidays and realized why he's been talking about it all year.
It came out in
super
March,
good.
so I have been talking about
really
it
fantastic.
all year.
I was originally waiting to play this on the Switch, and then that port seems to be delayed.
PC, just the controller and play it.
Well,
PC.
I've been playing it on the PC some,
Okay,
and
good.
yeah, no, it's good. It's really good.
It's very good.
You get to be a bug.
Yeah.
Make
This
sense
is another
with
one with a
bug.
really great art style.
It's got this
But
really
even-
nice hand-drawn art style that makes very selective use of color.
Well, but it builds this really interesting world.
Really
And,
huge world, too.
super in depth.
Yeah, huge and not depressing, but
No, I'd go with
sad. I mean, I guess a little bit, mostly just sad. It definitely feels like a world. I mean, it's very clearly a world in decay.
Some awful stuff happened. And turns out some worse stuff is about to happen. Get on to fixing that, why don't you? But the way the story is told is almost entirely through NPC dialogue. There is, I want to say, one cutscene between the start of the game and the end of the game.
Yeah.
But it makes it, I don't know, it's so fun because every time I see a new bug that looks interesting, I'm like, can I talk to them or are they going to try to smack me in the face?
Yeah, about that.
Maybe both.
Both. I mean, Hornet is very interested in talking to you.
It's true.
And also stabbing you a lot.
I'm looking forward to gameplay, being able to play as Hornet. She's neat.
She's really cool. Because of what they do, they can also tell these little mini stories. There's this minor bug who sings to you, and if you go back through that area a few times, you can hear other songs that she has. And then eventually other things may happen.
Yeah, it's it maybe gets just a little creepy. It may be a lot creepy.
I feel like I somehow didn't know that bugs were involved in this game.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely bugs.
It's literally totally about bugs.
It's Bug Castlevania.
Yeah, like you are a bug. The NPCs are bugs. The bad guys are bugs. It's all bugs all the time.
You
Some
fight
of them
with
might
a
be
nail.
magic flying bugs or ghost bugs, but they're still bugs.
That's a great big bug with a ladybug mace.
It also, I felt like it was at least a little creative as to like the order that you got new abilities in. In particular, like you don't get double jump until way later than I was expecting.
Yeah, I still do not have double jump.
Double jump is very late and not required to beat the game.
Like that's usually one of the earliest things that you get in a Metroidvania, or even start with it. Not this one.
There is actually an astoundingly small number of upgrades required to beat the game. You need the dash, you need the wall climb, you need the super dash. Other than that, you can do whatever.
You don't need the ground stomp.
You don't need the ground stomp. In fact, my first time through, it took me a very long time to get the ground stomp. You don't even need the ground stomp to get to the super dash. There's an alternate way in.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think I have the super dash. I definitely don't have the ground stomp.
I mean, prior to booting up this game and actually playing it, I felt like Guacamelee was the closest thing to Symphony of the Night that I had played in a long time. And this is absolutely a love story to Symphony of the Night.
A love story to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I did love Guacamelee.
Guacamelee is kind of interesting as a combat-focused Metroidvania, and this is also in that category, but it takes a dramatically different approach to it.
And as someone who doesn't play a ton of this type of game, like, it's quite challenging. It never feels completely unfair. Like, I get frustrated with it, but I know what I need to do to try to get my shit together next time.
I can think of a boss that you can fight twice that I hate with a burning passion. But other than that, I don't think it's that unfair. If you don't have the ground stomp, you haven't yet fought this boss.
I've admittedly not made it terribly far.
Suspected that was who you were talking about. Cause,
Oh, yes. Oh, I hate that dude so much.
I thought I'd beaten him, and then he decided that no, I hadn't. Jerk.
So, I am at the point where it has put 4 faces on my map, and I don't know how to get to any of them.
One of them is great to get to.
Right.
The other 3 take some doing.
I also really like the whole charm system.
Charm system lets you do a thing that a lot of games try and don't let you do ever, which is have multiple different ways to approach combat. Multiple different viable builds.
Yeah. And you can very much you can build to mitigate your weaknesses, or you can build towards your strengths. Like you can turn yourself into a glass cannon, or, you know, make yourself more survivable, or like, you know, what is it you want to do? You can do that thing.
I want to build to blow up everything with my fireball. Oh, what do you know? That works pretty well.
I want things to stop killing me so hard and do things to mitigate that. And I can do that. It works. The system works.
I enjoyed this game a lot. I would like more people to play it. I've heard so many times I'm not playing it till it comes to Switch, and yeah, sure, okay. But it's really great and you should play it.
I'm totally going to play it.
There's really no reason to wait.
I mean, the reason to wait is I want to play it on the Switch. I'm gonna. Like, I have it pre-ordered even.
Go ahead and play it now on PC, and then play it again on the Switch.
I don't want to play it on the PC, because it sounds like a game that would be great with a controller.
It is a game that's
It's
great with a
very
controller.
You have a controller on your PC.
Yeah, I don't want to play...
Yeah.
I try to... If I can play a game with a controller on something else, I like to do that. I do not have a comfortable... Like, despite everything, my sit at a PC and play on a controller is not, like, the most comfortable thing. I'd rather sit on my couch.
Yeah, and see, for me, sitting on my couch is my PC gaming comfort mode, because all my consoles are upstairs in my office.
I've reached the point where my television is almost too big to comfortably play games, I've discovered recently. So I'm just as happy to sit in front of my PC with a controller.
Okay, so next up is only got one vote, and I don't remember if it was me or if it was Kodra, but Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
It would be you.
I really like this game, in spite of one major flaw. I
also really like
hate
this game. It just didn't make top 5.
Yeah, like I hate the durability system, but other than that, I love pretty much everything that's going on in this game. Like, it's a really fun world to roam around and explore. And I really like the shrines. I like them better than traditional temples.
Oh, that's sort of the weakness for me, is that I didn't like the sort of unguided experience.
I guess that was like part of the thing that I liked the most about it, is that I could roam around and find things. And sometimes those were, Korok seeds. Sometimes those were shrines that I didn't know were there. Sometimes those were places that I saw that it exists, but later on I had to come back to because I finally had the ability to get there.
See, that thing you just said is actually why I wasn't having as much fun. Because I didn't find anything that you could get that would open up parts of the map to you. Like, you're given all of the tools you need at the very beginning. It's not like with most Zelda games where, oh, this part is blocked off, but once you complete this dungeon, it gets opened up.
Yeah, there's no hook shot. But there were definitely things that I didn't necessarily have a way to deal with at that very moment. In part because of the stupid durability system making me ration what I was using, and I didn't necessarily know where to get the thing that I thought I needed. And at least for a very short period of time, your abilities are gating some of the content, but you get most of them pretty quickly. I feel like this was a really fun game, but I also don't feel like this was my game of the year like it was for so many people. Like, I feel like Horizon Zero Dawn got robbed in the Game Awards by Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild winning, like, all the things. Either that or I Am Setsuna. Not I Am Setsuna, what's the... I'm drawing a blank on the name.
Sacrifice?
Yeah, there you go. For whatever reason, those two games are cross-linked in my brain.
They're very, very different games.
Yeah, I know, but they have kind of similarly sounding names.
Anyway, I did really like Zelda, mostly because it has an open world and isn't trying to tell any sort of a real great linear story in this world. So I can roam around and I don't feel like I'm completely wasting my time, because there's always like a Korok seed, or there's a shrine over here, or there's this weird weapon at the top of this mountain,
or a mini boss in the middle of a forest,
or that. Although mostly that just results in me getting my face punched in.
I really liked the ability to climb, even though the stamina mechanic felt a little weird at times.
I also really enjoyed the ability to go vertical on basically anything.
There were a lot of times that I figured out ways to get to things that weren't the actual way to get to the thing, and I appreciated that greatly. Either through a combination of climbing or gliding or something. Then only after I had gotten there did I find the actual way I was supposed to get there. But that's really the story of me in open world games, is I never end up getting there via the way that I'm supposed to get there. Like, the very first time I played Skyrim, I completely missed the existence of the skill-choosing stones. Like, the 3 stones that you're supposed to choose which way you're going to play the game. It was probably 20 hours later that I found out those were a thing, because I did not go that direction.
The correct answer is the steed anyway, so it doesn't really matter which one of those you pick.
Another one that is one of my picks that I don't think anyone else has played is Mass Effect Andromeda. And I feel like it's the most underrated game of 2017 because people didn't play it because of the notorious bugs that were there at release.
I mean, I started it.
I did start it. I got a decent chunk into it as well. I just didn't. I got disrupted from playing it and then didn't return to it.
I like the story of this game. I like what's going on. I like that it had interesting callbacks to the world we knew from the original trilogy. The Andromeda mission leaves shortly before the events of Mass Effect 2. And as a result, there are things that are mentioned in the game that if you've played the original trilogy, you'll immediately spot like, oh, okay, that's a slightly different side of a thing I already knew. And that was a lot of the payoff for this game, was it's a new universe, but it's also kind of giving me hints of the universe that I knew and loved. But at the same time, it's also a vastly different story, and one that's far more hopeful than the Mass Effect games provided. It is the Star Trek Expedition Force type narrative where you're going off to discover new worlds. And the only negative is it felt like the promise that was talked about in all the stuff leading up to release, what we actually got to explore was a much smaller world than I personally was expecting. And I feel like had it done better, they would have fed us additional content like they did all through like Mass Effect 2. But unfortunately, that is not to be the case. So like I feel like this is a really underrated game, but it's also kind of a point of sadness for me because I would have loved to have seen where this story went. And it kind of ends on a universally hopeful note that like I was so ready to see what this new world that we're experiencing held for me. So I don't know, like it maybe doesn't have the strong story arc that the original Mass Effect series did, but it has a lot of really interesting smaller story arcs that I was extremely invested in. And I guess my only hope is that maybe, just maybe, you know, the ship will turn around at some point and more content will be released, but I doubt it, and that makes me sad. But if you've not played through it, I highly suggest doing so, and I really just want someone to talk about it with. Because some stuff happens, and there's some hints, and I want someone to talk about it with.
I know them feels, Bill. It's on my list for the year.
Like this is my game. Like I feel like all of us had that game this year. Like for the longest time, that was Grace with Horizon Zero Dawn until we all beat it.
Please play this game. I need to talk about it.
And Mass Effect Andromeda was definitely that game for me. So I feel like in time, history will view this game way fonder than all the YouTubers made it seem like.
I really hate to tell you this, but history is going to view this game as the game that killed the Mass Effect series.
And it doesn't deserve that title. It really doesn't. Like, it had bugs. Everything has bugs. But, like, the day 2 or 3 patch that they released fixed them.
Yeah.
So, it's so sad that, like
this game didn't grab me because it and Persona 5 came out at roughly the same time, and I played them at roughly the same time, and one of them kind of devoured the other one. But like what I played of it didn't deserve the hate that it got. Not by a long shot. It was lacking a thing that I really liked in the original Mass Effect series. And I don't know if I will ever like it as much as it might deserve because of that. But it wasn't bad.
No, it does not deserve all the hate that it got.
No. I feel like it died because the glitches were so immensely memeable.
Well, they were also very upfront.
Yeah.
First hour, you run into some of the major ones.
But basically I'm saying, ignore everything you've heard about this game. It is cheap. Buy it, play it, enjoy it. I've spent a lot of hours playing this game. I don't remember how many, but a lot of hours. Okay, Night in the Woods.
Night in the Woods. Night in the Woods is the second game we've mentioned so far that is Millennial Simulator.
It is an odd-looking game.
It is an odd game. Night in the Woods is a game where you play as a college dropout who has returned to her small town to live with her parents. And it's a game about dealing with this. And then it gets weird. I have not finished this game, but I really enjoy it. I'm really enjoying it so far. It might hit a little too close to home, but I don't know. I just really enjoyed it, what I played of it.
It looks very pretty and looks like a game I really want to try.
It's definitely a you game.
Yeah, it's been on my list. I just haven't. It's on a handful. We may talk about this a bit later, but it's been on a handful. It's been one of a handful of games I just haven't had the time to get to this year.
Yeah, there have been a lot of those. The list of games that didn't make top 5 and or I didn't get to is fairly long. This is delightful and has a sort of musical sub-theme. Then a lot of the dream sequences involve putting together songs and maybe play bass in a band. So
I feel like I
that's also a
understand
mini game that you can do.
Between that and looking at the art style, I completely understand why this is your game of the year.
I think it's really cool.
I feel like another game that I want to play, but I haven't gotten around to it, is Okami HD. Because I have never played Okami.
I actually have it on the was it on the GameCube?
PS2.
Was
I
it on
think
It came out on the PS2, then it came out on the Wii, and then the PS3.
I think I might have it on the Wii. I played a fair bit of it, like the original version, and yeah, I definitely need to pick up the HD version and actually complete it.
It looks amazing. And I think Okami is the best Zelda game not called Zelda. I also think it's better than a bunch of games that are called Zelda.
Yeah, you are correct.
I mean, in part, I have to play this at some point because I have a coworker who is so immensely devoted to this game that she has an Okami-themed fursuit. So I at least have to know what makes this game so amazing.
It's structured like a Zelda game, except, well, you're a wolf.
Dog.
Whatever.
Canine. And you have a magic paintbrush.
Magic paintbrush. And you also use the Imperial Regalia of Japan to beat up demons and things.
Yep. Yeah, I'm almost certain I had it on the Wii because I'm pretty sure I remember motion control painting.
Yeah, I remember when it originally came out because it seemed like something I really wanted to play, and I still have not played it till I regret.
So yeah, it released on PS4 and PC and Xbox One in December. So that's why it made this list. And it is one of my favorite games of all time. I guess the only thing about it is it doesn't really know when to end. Okami is very long, and it fakes out like it's ending twice.
Mm.
The first time it's sort of like when you get to Excess Castle and FF5, in that you realize this probably isn't the end, but it looks like it could be. And then it does that again. You still have enough blank slots in the UI to realize that, nope, probably still not the end. So I know a lot of people have criticized it for it dragging on a little too long. This doesn't bother me quite so much because I find just running around and the combat and everything else about it just fun to do.
Is it pretty standard Zelda-style combat, then?
It is not. It's important to remember that Clover Studios is the group that eventually became Platinum Games. So you have fairly action-y combat that you transition to a sort of battle screen for. So you have combos and various abilities that maybe counterattacks, or also you can draw stuff in the middle of combat that may have an effect on making fire or cutting pieces off of enemies or various other things. Combat is really the area where it departs the most from being a Zelda game.
Okay, so this next game I understand nothing about, other than the fact that it constantly shows up in my Twitter feed and a Slack channel.
I'm so glad this game exists, but it is not for me.
Opus Magnum. What the hell is this game even?
It's a game
It is
export GIFs, and therefore it takes up social media space.
Opus Magnum is the latest in a long line of puzzle games by Zachtronics, which is a dude that makes puzzle games. The basic sort of puzzle game is the same for pretty much all his games. It is putting together some sort of engine that does a thing, and then letting the engine run successfully enough times to basically prove that yes, it could run forever and be okay. So the previous ones were Space Chem and TIS 100 and Shenzhen IO was the most recent one. And in this one, the previous ones were all technical things. Like you were a chemist, you were a designer of computer parts, that sort of thing. In this one, you're an alchemist, and you're using these machines that will, alchemically change elements into other elements and turn, lead into gold, although over multiple steps through other metals, and bond elements together to create whatever the goal thing is you need to make. And it's just very smooth and very pretty and has really good music and is, I think, the most accessible of the games that Zachtronics has done, because let's be honest, Space Chem and especially TIS 100 were not super accessible. And yeah, it's one of the best puzzle games I've played in I don't know how long, maybe since Hex Cells.
I mean, I will say that the GIFs are mesmerizing.
Mm-hmm.
I love this guy's games, and I haven't played this one because time, but
yeah,
I want to.
I mostly haven't gotten into this game, but picked this one up, and I like it a lot.
It's also got so Shinzen IO was the first one of his puzzle games that has a solitaire game hidden inside it that was turned out so good that you can actually buy the solitaire game all by itself if you don't want to deal with all the puzzle stuff and just want to play solitaire. He included a solitaire game in this one, and I really, really like it. It's a marble-based solitaire game that is reminiscent of Mahjong Solitaire. I've actually been, most of the times, the past couple of weeks that I've loaded up Opus Magnum, it's basically been to just play a few games of the solitaire. And also there's an interesting story that you progress through as you're doing the various puzzles involving graduating from the Alchemist's Academy and going to work for a noble house, and then the noble house getting into a war.
I feel like they must have had a good year, or this person must have had a good year, because I've seen tons of this on social media.
As mentioned, you can export puzzle solutions as GIFs, and this was maybe one of the most amazing ideas that they've probably ever had regarding, marketing and social media.
That part is 100% true.
Yeah, because you can create these just wonderful, mesmerizing machines and show them off to people.
Yeah.
Oh, and it's also hooked up to the Steam Workshop, so people can create new puzzles and put them up for you to try out and so forth.
Okay, I believe this is a Kodra pick. Through the Ages.
Yes, Through the Ages, a new story of civilization, came out on iOS this year and Android. So Through the Ages is a board game by Vlada Vodal, and it's a game. It is the board game I have probably spent the most time with, and now that it's out on iOS, I can play games constantly with a really beautiful UI, and it's just really great. This is a game about basically playing Civilization abstracted down to a board game that isn't terrible.
Are you saying you don't like Risk?
Oh, I'm saying I don't think the original Civilization board games were good, and that Sid Meier bringing those to the computer was a market improvement. But this game abstracts away all of the map elements of Civilization games, and instead what you're left with is allocating resources to various levels of technology and building tech trees and whatnot, trying to generate a civilization that is going to be the most culturally dominant empire at the end of the game. And having put probably 200 plus plays in of it, it's still a good game. It still has interesting decisions to make. I still always have fun with it. I would say it's the game I spent the most time with, because I have spent a lot of time with, except I know how much time I've spent with Persona 5, and that's a ludicrous number. Also, I'm Coder22, and if any of you want to play Through the Ages on iOS, you can send me an invite, and I will absolutely play games. Preferably, I like the default mode so that I can have some time, and I'm not, racing through, but yeah, love to get more games in with people.
So I feel like this next one is kind of a weird outlier in this list, but I totally understand why Tam picked this. Or at least I am assuming it's a Tam pick.
That's accurate.
Warhammer 40K.
Man, what a year for Games Workshop, huh?
It has been so entertaining to watch your opinion of 40K do a complete 180. I love it.
Yeah, well, I mean,
you could start at the beginning of our shows and listen back through the last 4 some years, and Tam has gone from being utterly bitter and disappointed in Games Workshop to, quite honestly, sounding really positive about what the future's going to bring.
I don't even know that it's bitter.
That turnaround is deserved.
I don't even know if it's bitter and disappointed because I was never invested in it enough to be bitter and disappointed. Like, it's been this thing that I've kind of known about on the periphery, and I played a little bit when I was too young to really be able to appreciate it. And I looked into it at one point and was like, wow, this is total garbage. And like, we've been recording the show for a while. I've talked about minis games quite a bit, and I almost always use Warhammer 40K as the example of what not to do. Like, it's just been just a complete disaster. And it's been a disaster because it's a game that doesn't want to admit that it's a game, or for a very long time. Or if it did admit that it was a game, it didn't want to admit what that meant. And I get why. I get why it was that way. They come from historicals. Like, they have this background in historicals, and what they really want is like what they wanted for a long time was to make a game that played like historicals. And historical miniatures games are about accurately recreating an event from history. So you kind of go into it already knowing who's going to win or lose, and you're going to try to just accurately portray what it would have been like. And they're not games per se. They're like this collaborative simulation discussion thing. And people write homebrew rules to try to like put some structure around essentially reading some dry history.
Yeah. I mean, traditionally, the goal of historical wargaming is like of the designer is not to create a balanced game. It's to simulate what really happened as accurately as possible.
Yeah. And so 40K has labored under that for a really, really long time. And when confronted about it, their response is, we don't really think people should play our game competitively. We kind of look down on that.
Which honestly made sense if you looked at... So when they had a big event, like a games day, for example, the big money prizes went to the miniature competition, not to winning battles.
Yeah.
So like the Golden Demon is like their penultimate award, and it's for having the coolest miniature, not for beating out the bracket.
Yeah. It's for best painted or best painted / converted / based. I mean, it's a whole thing. Best diorama that you've created with their miniatures. And yeah, so, and they've done this for a really long time, which means that if you want to play this game, there hasn't been a lot of reason to do it. And as a result, for quite some time, Games Workshop has been losing all kinds of market share to other miniatures companies because they're making games. And so this year was 40K 8th edition, which, whatever normally. And I pretty much ignored it. I saw some noise being made about it on the internet and kind of ignored it for a while. And I kept hearing a bunch of people, like people who I used to play other games with and whose opinions I generally trust, saying like, oh man, I'm having so much fun with this. I'm having so much fun with this other thing. I'm really excited to go play 40K this evening. And it's like people I know who collect miniatures just to paint them were like, I'm really excited to go play 40K this evening. I was like, wait, what? So I picked this up, and what got me was they had rules for free. Just like you can get their rules for free, and I decided to go into the game store and get the like free rule book, and the free rule book is like 7 pages, and I'm instantly suspicious. But those 7 pages of rules condense the game down into something eminently playable, super accessible. I think it's the first miniatures game that Kodra has really enjoyed playing because it addresses a lot of the things that I think he normally doesn't like.
It's simple enough. Not that it's simple enough. It also allows for pre-measuring, which means that I don't have to eyeball distances. It means I can actually start setting things up.
Yeah, it cuts out a lot of the like
It gets rid of facing, which is super important because a lot of my really frustrating moments in other minis games was because, like, I ran a guy forward and I wasn't, like, thinking about tactically facing them after their charge for, like, optimal usage. Like, that just feels like a bad gotcha anytime they're like, you ended your move in my, like, back arc with your back arc exposed. Like, oh, okay.
I've done some, elaborate, and I love Infinity. I haven't played much of it this year, but I like Infinity, and it has all of those things. But I don't think they add to that game as much as I don't think they add to that game in such a way that it offsets the value of, hey, this is a game I can pick up and play. It's much like I've been playing probably a weekly game with another friend of ours locally. And maybe not quite every week, but close. And it's been fun because it's like we do something a little different. We hang out, we roll dice. It's low. It's like low commitment and low like a low cognitive load, comparatively speaking. It's not stressful, and they've solved a lot of in one surprising series of swoops. This year, they've solved most of the problems that I've had with the game in general. And it's not a perfect game. It's not a super balanced game, but it went from being the thing I use as an example of how to design games badly, like to the point where I've written papers on this game being an example of how to do things poorly in game design, to a game that I'm really enjoying for a game, not just because it's got minis that I enjoy painting. Which is, for me, the other piece of it, and I think the piece of it that pushes me over the top, like, I paint minis. It has never been something I've enjoyed doing, but I've done it because I like the end result. And so I paint them, and I'm never happy with how they turn out, and I'm never really excited by the results, but the results feel good because I spend so much time in front of a computer for most of my life that and so many of my accomplishments are these sort of ephemeral digital things that I really like having a physical object that I can point to and say, like, yes, I created that. It's something I can wordlessly pick up in my hands, look at, enjoy, put back, and it's a physical thing. And I don't get a lot of that, and so miniatures are kind of my expression of that. But I've never been happy with, I mostly have never been happy with what I can actually accomplish. I've never been a very great painter. And picking up 40K, because those models are so much simpler and so much, they're designed to ease you into painting in a way that Infinity sure isn't, and War Machine sure isn't. I've become a much, much better painter this year. Like, I'd say that when I started painting 40K miniatures to today, so like 6 months, I've become a better painter in these last 6 months than I had in probably the previous, like, 6 years, just because it's accessible to me. And I can look at a piece and understand what I'm doing to it. And I've gotten results lately that I'm like really happy with, which is a first for me. So it makes my list because I've put a bunch of time into it. I really enjoy. It's fun to play. It's accessible. It's relatively easy to pick up. The rules aren't complicated. It doesn't have like layers and layers of gotcha mechanics or weird overlapping rules for the most part. I mean, you can get there, but it's nowhere near the complexity of other things. And you can just have fun with it. And I get to, paint things and actually be happy with the result. That's new.
And they're finally actually advancing the setting. That's pretty neat.
Oh yeah, that's the other piece, is they're advancing the setting of this game. And I've never been much for the setting of this game because I felt like
it's hilarious.
Yeah, like it's doing this black humor thing in a way that I feel like much of its audience takes a little too seriously, which makes it hard for me to really get into.
Yeah, no, if you take the setting seriously, you are doing it wrong.
Yeah. And a lot of the stuff they've released this year, both visually and story-wise, has really put a lot of effort into driving home, like, no, some of these things are jokes, and they're meant to be funny, And we're going to take these things that you are taking way too seriously and like make it unavoidable that they're supposed to be funny. And then also in the story, they're spending a lot, like the story has explicit call outs to rebuking the idea of taking the story too seriously, which is incredibly weird to me. But like one of their big main characters who's been missing for whatever long time comes back, and his response is, what have you guys done with the place? This is a disaster.
It's like, no, everything you're doing is the exact opposite of what the Emperor would have wanted. What in the hell?
Yeah, like, this is horrible, you people. What's wrong with you? And it sort of mirrors my thoughts on just that, like, the way humanity is portrayed in this setting. And hearing, like, their big returning character be like, whoa, guys, what is this? Is kind of, I don't know, that's kind of fun. It makes me interested in what they're doing with the story in a way that I've never been. But yeah, game I have spent the most time with this year, though not necessarily playing.
They're also doing a lot of interesting things in the digital side of the house.
Yeah, within the past, the past few years, like, Games Workshop finally discovered that, computers are a thing that people have and enjoy. And maybe we should let them play our games on the computer. And some of them are really good.
Well, and Games Workshop's gone through this weird sequence of events to where they didn't let anyone license anything. And then they went through a pattern where they were letting literally everyone license something. And now they've maybe, like, dialed it back to where they're only letting good games get licenses again.
Well, that and they got angry at Fantasy Flight.
I never played the Fantasy Flight Warhammer-themed games, so I don't know if they're any good or not.
Deathwatch is a lot of fun. I've played a decent bit of it. I mean, part of it is probably that the guy who runs it runs a really good Deathwatch game. The members of the Inquisition that we report to are named Spengler and Stance and Zedmore.
Wow.
But yeah, it and their edition of Warhammer Fantasy they did a really good job with. And then the Relic was the 40k board game they did. That was basically Talisman skinned with 40k and also like a lot of the rules issues fixed. It was a lot of fun.
They also released Shadespire this year. Not Fantasy Flight, but
that wasn't even Fantasy Flight.
No, it wasn't Fantasy Flight, but like
they're doing them themselves now.
Yeah, the board game is legit. But yeah, I guess they took their license back from Fantasy Flight and have been doing some rather surprisingly nice stuff with it. Like, I don't know if Coder and Ash have opinions on it, but Shadespire is another one of those, like, Games Workshop doing shockingly good things all of a sudden.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it.
Same here.
So, a game that I was super looking forward to, and then the year got entirely two-packed full of stuff, and I am kind of disappointed I haven't played it yet. Wolfenstein 2.
The other very topical game.
We maybe had a few of those.
In some ways, even more than Persona. But yeah, it's Wolfenstein, but like improved in some ways, and primary and set in America, and yeah.
How far into the game are you?
I have reached the point that I can go back to places and start hunting death officers.
Okay, you're further
so yeah,
than me.
The thing has happened.
The thing has happened, huh?
The thing that I as soon as I saw that sitting in the tank in Set's lab, I knew where this was going. I just didn't know how I was going to end up there.
The thing sure happened, didn't it? I'm not sure how I feel about it.
I mean, by the time it happened, I had seen it coming from like 5 miles away, so I was...
I guess that's fair. I can see how that would have happened. It goes nuts, doesn't it?
Yes.
This game is crazy.
Yeah, like they double down on all the like nutty super science. Like the first thing that happens is the Frau Engel has been like chasing after you while you were in a coma for the past 6 months, and she finally caught up to your giant submarine on her helicarrier. And it just goes from there.
Yeah, the game is very bonkers. I kind of stopped playing because that was like, wow, I need to set this game down for a bit. That was bonkers. I enjoyed it. It didn't make my list because I don't know. I feel like they are not treating this game. I don't know. This game isn't doing what New Order did for me, and they also got rid of one of my favorite characters.
I was pretty angry when that happened. I understand why it happened, and I really like the replacement, so at least there's that. But yeah, on the bright side, they did not get rid of my favorite character, Bombot. I'm still holding out hope that we get a sequel or like an episode, because they're doing the additional like episodes where you get to play other people. I'm holding out hope that we get one where we can play Bombot.
This game kind of killed hope that they were going to move away from BJ.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, that like you and I basically had two vastly different experiences with Wolfenstein New Order. And I'm wondering if the fact that I chose the other path, how that's going to work out in this game.
I mean, the path I chose means I have a gun that shoots diesel bombs, sticky diesel bombs, that I can remotely detonate. So I'm pretty happy with that choice.
Okay, so for a last-minute add to the list.
Look, I only had 4 games on my list on the spreadsheet until I realized that this also came out this year.
I somehow also sort of forgot this came out this year. Diablo 3 Rise of the Necromancer.
That was this year?
That was this year.
That was pretty much what I said, and then hurriedly added it to the list at the last second. I mean, I've been desperate for more Diablo 3 stuff forever, so it was a no-brainer for me to purchase the Necromancer pack, but it also really sort of reinvigorated the game, for me at least. I've been incredibly happy with it. It is obviously just, a DLC pack. It's not a, full-fledged expansion, but I still think it warrants being on the list for me because, boy, I put an awful lot of time into it, and I love the class. It's a classic class, and it's executed really well. It's super fun and satisfying to play, and explode corpses everywhere. So yeah, I just there's not a lot to it. I think that was my biggest disappointment with it, but I certainly have gotten many, many hours of play out of it.
Probably the funnest thing that I've had playing it was going back and redoing all the story as the Necromancer and seeing all of the new cutscene and flavor text and all the different reactions that the various NPCs that you encounter during like little missions and things make. And
yeah, I mean, they really fully integrated it into the game. It's not just, we tacked on this class. It does sort of fully engage with all of the story beats when you play through it that way, which is the way it ought to be. So it's good they did that. And honestly, it inspired me to go back and level one of every class through the story, because it's, as much as I have played this game, that's not actually something I have ever done. I think only, or at least until this project, I had only played through the story with maybe the wizard and the witch doctor, and so now I've been going back through with all of the other classes. I've already got them leveled by playing through adventure mode, but actually going back through and seeing the story with the different classes has been fun. And it gave me yet another class to do all of the set dungeons for. Which is a level of nonsense that I still don't know why I did this year, but...
Because wings?
But because wings. But
that doesn't get you from the Necromancer, I don't think.
No, there's no wings for doing the set dungeons on the Necromancer, sadly. There's also Necromancer wings, but they're not from the set dungeon. They're for doing all of the other Necromancer achievement. And they're pretty sweet.
I'm super impressed at how different the Necromancer feels than the Witch Doctor. Since Witch Doctor was kind of the Diablo 3 class that was set out to appeal to people who used to play the Necromancer?
Yeah, I mean, that was the concern for me, certainly, was how are they going to implement this, pet-based, potentially swarm of pet and spellcaster-based class that seems to have a very high amount of overlap with the Witch Doctor. And, like, functionally, they do, but, the flavor of them and the feel of them is completely different. So I think that was definitely a success.
So we have shockingly whittled through a list of 16 games pretty reasonably quick. And I know, like, when we were talking about this, there were other games that we kind of thought should get an honorable mention for one reason or another this year. I know one game for me that I feel like deserves a serious honorable mention is World of Warcraft Legion. In part because for years World of Warcraft has been in this like 2-3 patch cycle and then done with content for an expansion. And with Legion, they have broken that mold significantly. And while I have mixed feelings about Argus, that was something I never expected them to add in as free content during an expansion cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I also have mixed feelings about Argus, but boy, there's plenty of stuff to do there. And they really, I think, did an excellent job of breaking up patch content and separating it out from the raid releases, so that it seems like there's been a steady trickle of stuff to do for a very, very long time. And I mean, this is the expansion where I've sort of given up bothering with raiding very much, but there's still enough stuff to do that I've stuck around for a large chunk of the year 2017.
And there's an upcoming patch soon that adds in the allied races and a rework of how level scaling works in the old world. So, like, they're still doing a steady trickle of releases. It's not like we've entered that horrible 16-month period where there's no content that's happened before in a couple of the expansions. There's been this constant trickle, and like the friends of mine that are raiding are still deeply engaged in the raid content at this point. And I'm not sure how many raids have been released during this patch cycle. I think 4? I can't remember if we're on our 4th or our 5th.
I think this is the 4th. Well, the first tier was split up into a couple of smaller ones, or one additional smaller one, yeah. So I think technically this is the 5th raid, but it's maybe the 4th tier.
Yeah, because you had Emerald Nightmare, then Trial of Valor, then Nighthold, then Tomb of Sargeras, and now Antora's Burning Throne. But yeah, so like a much deeper patch cycle than they've had in the past, or at least the last several expansions. So definitely feel like that deserves an honorable mention, even though Legion didn't come out this year.
I have 2 re-releases that I think deserve a mention.
Okay.
One of them was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which I definitely played a lot more than the original release, because it was on a platform I could take to other places.
Yeah, me too.
And the other is FF12 Zodiac Age, which does enough tweaking to the base game, which I thought was not that great, that I enjoyed the re-release a lot more. They altered slightly how the license grid works, so you can differentiate characters if you choose to, and also which gambit options are available to you, so you don't have to wait to find out that, healing somebody who's under 50% is locked now, and you need to get further into the game before you can buy that gambit. They just unlocked them all at the start, and that was a much better choice.
Is that available on PC yet?
It is.
Okay, that was...
I'm sure it is only a matter of time.
Right, that was the main thing, the reason why I hadn't touched it yet, is I didn't want to buy it for console. Any other honorable mention thoughts?
Oh, man.
I got a lot.
Yeah, I got a lot.
I've got one.
In the same vein as Mario Kart, I kind of want to call out Pokken DX for being the first modern fighting game that I actually like and is accessible and is still doing the combo, the attack block throw mechanic. Poking DX is sweet, and on the Switch.
I would like to give an honorable mention to Kingdom of Loathing, which is not remotely a new game, but is a game that continues to add new content and is probably the single game I played most in 2017 after picking it back up when West of Loathing came out.
I feel like West of Loathing needs to be added to the list too, because it's a phenomenal game too.
Yeah, it is as well. Like, just their sense of humor is perpetually right up my alley. Like the annual Christmas celebration, Crimbo, just ended this year, and this year, with the ascension of Uncle Crimbo last year, who became one with the spirit of Crimbo, the elves were left, to fend for themselves, and then the humorless ones came, mimes, and thus it was a silent night.
Wow.
And mimes in Kingdom of Loathing are terrifying. They have been showing up occasionally for, I think, since 2012, and ugh.
They're basically the Kingdom of Loathing equivalent to the Slender Man.
Yeah, like I feel like Jick and his team's philosophy on the mimes is similar to the Adventure Time's philosophy on the Lich.
Yes.
Everything else is weird and funny and hilarious. This is not. This is scary.
So, it did not make the list because I have not gotten terribly far into it, but I want to at least give a shout out to Assassin's Creed Origins, which is maybe the only Assassin's Creed game that I've ever really, really liked, because it's like the least like the other Assassin's. It's a very different Assassin's Creed game.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten that impression. I've seen like lots of people very down on it because it's not like the previous Assassin's Creed games.
It's the Assassin's Creed game for the people that didn't like Assassin's Creed games.
That's kind of a rough marketing position.
Yeah, that's a weird place to be.
But I enjoy it a lot. Like it's another big open world game, but like it's also sort of charming, and it's also a very much get revenge on horrible evil old man game, which is apparently a common theme this year. Other thoughts?
You had some Ash, right?
Yeah, this was a pretty good year for Warriors games. Well, this was a year for Warriors games. Iron Warriors came out this year, and it was pretty good. Warriors All-Stars came out this year, and it was pretty not. But Dragon Quest Heroes 2 came out on this side of the Pacific this year, and I really liked that game.
Yeah, and it is really good.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I have a handful, because I played a lot of games this year. Not making my list, but almost. Fire Emblem Heroes, which keeps on adding new interesting stuff, keeps on mixing up its own mechanics, and I've played so much of it this year. And also has the least abusive loot box mechanic I've seen in like any game, because it's constantly flooding you with currency to the point where I don't even feel the need to buy any. I just do sometimes out of guilt, basically. I really enjoy this game. It's a puzzle. It's like a puzzle-y tactics RPG. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the like unraveling the new stuff that they come up with. They're constantly coming up with new stuff for me to unravel. Neo, which I played a ton of and loved early this year, and it's really good. It's here. I realize what I'm about to say. It's Dark Souls with samurai, except it actually pretty much is that thing. I realize it's Dark Souls, but meme is played out at this point.
Look. Some games you can't avoid it.
But yeah, in this case, like
when Code Vein comes out, we're going to be having that same conversation.
Yep. But it is that, and it fixes the thing that I don't like about the Dark Souls games, and gave me a game that I really enjoy. So I had a whole bunch of fun with that. I keep saying I'm going to come back to it. I intend to. I just haven't gotten around to it because so many games. I also want to mention Dishonored: Death of the Outsider, which, in much the same vein as the DLC for the original Dishonored, it tells I don't even know if I've talked about it on the show. But it was really, really good, and it removes the bit where Dishonored judges you for killing people, but does it in a way that makes perfect sense with the game. And I found it really interesting that they took that tack to it, but Dishonored was always like, hey, if you're a crazy murderer, if you're like a crazy murderer, you don't get as good an ending. And this is like, no, I actually care. Like your character doesn't matter that much to you. You can do whatever you like. You're not playing by those same rules. And that's neat. It's neat to see them kind of, because that's one of the biggest complaints I know a lot of people have had with the Dishonored series is like, hey, most of the coolest tools are the ones that you probably shouldn't be using. And this gets rid of that.
Yeah, the whole I could put shrapnel bombs on things, but those don't have a stun setting.
Yep. And it also does it in a way that suggests some really, really, I can't really go into it without spoilers, but really interesting things about the Dishonored setting that, again, much like the DLC for Dishonored 1 had, it does really interesting things with where this setting is going to go next. Like, I probably know who the main character of the next game is, and it's going to be weird. I don't know how I feel about playing a Dishonored game as the outsider. But we'll see. It'll be interesting. And then I didn't get a chance to play Nier Automata.
I also did not get a chance to play this game and really wanted to.
I really wanted to. And I feel like it probably would have made my list if I'd had the chance. But I just didn't. Didn't get to it. It's on my list for this year, for early this year. So you may be hearing me sneak it in next year. We'll see. And finally, just sort of wrap it all up. Guild Wars 2: Path of Fire. That was a ton of fun. Yeah. I had a ton of fun with that. I haven't been back to it in a while because, again, too many games this year. But it's got it kind of turned around in the last few Living Story seasons, and with this expansion, they've kind of turned around their awkward storytelling with characters I hate into a series of characters that I actually quite like. They kind of got semi-quietly got rid of all of the characters that were annoying and have left the game with just the most interesting ones. And that's cool.
Yeah, the characters we hate all like died or got brain damage
or like took an office job or something. Yeah. Like, whatever. Nobody cares about them. Let's stay with the most interesting ones. And cool. Like, I like all of these characters, and they tell a really interesting story with them. It also gets special mention for the best implementation of flying mounts I've ever seen in a game. I absolutely adore what they've done with flying mounts, because it accomplishes both the this isn't just GM move with a fancy graphic, but also I want to use my flying mount to take pretty pictures of the landscape. Like, you get both of these things, which is awesome. And then the best boss dialogue in a game that I played this year. I won't spoil it because I know some people haven't gotten to it, but the back and forth that your character has a voice throughout the game, and they give your character and the final boss of the expansion a back and forth dialogue during the final fight, and it's awesome. And I have a huge amount of respect for the difficulty that is to script, but also the end result is sweet. So that's my honorable mention series. There are a lot of good games this year.
Any other games to add to the list before we start to wrap things up?
Since Tam opened the floor up to non-video games, Drop Mix.
Oh yeah,
because that is a really neat and clever music game that I have not gotten to play as much as I want to, but the half a dozen games of it that I've managed to play have been a whole lot of fun.
For me, I think the only other one that I've played a ton of is Legendary Game of Heroes, which I'm still actively playing. And I wouldn't put it on any game of the year list, but it is still a fun way to pass some time when I just have my phone.
Pyre definitely deserves some mention as what would have been the soundtrack of the year if Persona 5 hadn't come out last year.
I've played a shocking amount of Pokemon Go, as much as that is actually really playing a game, considering all I do is catch Pokemon. And anyway, any last thoughts?
2017 sure was a year for games.
It sure was. And honestly, considering the year that it was in other ways, I think we needed this many good games.
Yes.
Seriously. 2018, yo.
As always, would love to hear any of our listeners' thoughts on what their favorite games were. And we will see you again next week for another one of these shows. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See ya.